I wasn't looking for proof. That's the part that stings the most. I wasn't snooping, wasn't going through her purse, wasn't scrolling through messages like some insecure husband playing detective. I was just looking for her gloves. That's it. Just the stupid gloves she always tosses in random places and then blames me for losing. It was a cold Monday morning. Gray skies, windshield frozen over, and Casey was already running late for what she called a foundation touch base. That was her new phrase lately. Not a meeting, a touch base. Said it sounded lighter, more informal. I offered to help warm up the car while she got ready and grabbed her coat from the hallway rack. As I slid my hand into the deep outer pocket, I felt something thin and rigid against the lining. It was a hotel key card. Riverfront Hotel, printed in faint gold along the matte black surface. I turned it over slowly. Room 418. At first, I stared at it like it had landed from another planet. I didn't jump to conclusions. I didn't want to. Casey's job, Senior Partnerships Director at the Horizon Foundation, meant she was constantly networking, hosting, arranging donor stays. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility that she'd had to secure a hotel room for someone. Maybe she'd been running late and shoved the key in her pocket without thinking. Maybe. But when I reached back in, deeper into that same pocket, I pulled out something else. A thin, crinkled receipt, folded into quarters. The paper was smooth, recently handled, and the ink hadn't even faded. I opened it carefully, scanning the details. 2 breakfast charges. Billed to room 418, timestamped at 6:42 a.m. Yesterday. I just stood there, in the front hallway, holding a coat and a piece of evidence I didn't know what to do with. Felt like the air in the house changed. I could still hear her upstairs blow-drying her hair, humming along to that lo-fi playlist she plays on mornings when she's trying to stay centered. I should have confronted her right then, but I didn't. Instead, I quietly slipped the receipt and key card back into her coat pocket like I hadn't seen a thing. The day dragged after that. Everything took longer. My email inbox felt heavier. Lunch tasted like cardboard. I kept replaying it in my head. Room 418, 2 breakfasts, 6:42 a.m. Like a loop I couldn't turn off. Part of me wanted to call the hotel, ask questions, but I knew I wouldn't. Not yet. I still wanted to believe in the benefit of the doubt. Later that afternoon, I went out to Casey's car to grab my phone charger. I'd left it in her glove box after our weekend grocery run. I unlocked the door, slid into the driver's seat, and popped the console open. That's when I saw it. Tucked next to a crumpled tissue and a travel-sized hand lotion. Sleek packaging for Tom Ford cologne. Still glossy, recently opened. A deep black box with metallic letters. I didn't even have to pick it up to know it wasn't for me. I don't wear Tom Ford. Never have. And here's the thing. Casey doesn't buy gifts randomly. She's thoughtful to a fault: birthdays, anniversaries, promotions. But this? No note. No mention. Just packaging from a boutique cologne. Bought at the Riverfront Hotel according to the small branded bag it came in, folded underneath. I sat there for a long time. Engine off. Hands on the steering wheel like I might drive somewhere but didn't know where. My stomach felt like it had dropped out of my body. I told myself it still didn't mean anything. That there had to be some version of this story that made sense. That didn't involve what it was starting to look like. That night she came home late. I was in the kitchen, half pretending to make dinner. Pasta water boiling, sauce still cold in the jar. She walked in like nothing was off. In fact, she was glowing. Her makeup was still perfect, coat draped over her arm, high heels in her hand like she was floating above the floor. "Sorry I'm late," she said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek without really stopping. That donor from L.A. showed up early. Total logistics nightmare. I had to rearrange everything on the fly. I didn't say anything at first, just watched her kick off her shoes and toss her bag on the counter. "Which hotel did you put him in?" I asked as casually as I could. She didn't miss a beat. "Riverfront. Only thing available with short notice." I nodded slowly. "Room 418? That caught her. Just the faintest pause. Not long enough to be obvious, but just long enough for me to see her recalibrate. "Yeah," she said quickly, looking down at her phone. I think so. Why? I shrugged. Found the key card in your coat. Oh, she smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Yeah, they gave it to me while I was checking him in. I meant to return it. He was starving, so I ordered breakfast ahead of time and it ended up on the room tab. Stupid cashier charged it to me instead of the guest's comp. I already called about it. She kept talking, something about flights and Uber surges and a last-minute board call. But I'd stopped listening. The words were there, but her eyes weren't meeting mine. And she changed the subject with such polish that it was almost admirable. Almost. You want Thai or are we doing leftovers? She asked, smiling like she'd just gotten home from yoga, not from wherever she'd really been. I said Thai was fine. She ordered, humming again. Same playlist. Same routine. But something had shifted. After dinner, she disappeared into the upstairs bathroom for a long shower. I could hear the water running, steam curling out from under the door. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice, but I couldn't shake the image of that hotel room. I couldn't unsee the timestamp. 2 breakfasts. 1 room. 6:42 a.m. Casey and I have been married for 11 years. We met working for the same public health nonprofit, back when we were broke and running on coffee and shared vision. She was brilliant, fierce, empathetic. The kind of person who made other people feel like they mattered. That was what drew me in. That sense of conviction, of presence. She lit up every room she walked into, and for the longest time I believed I was lucky to be the one she came home to. But lately, things had changed. Nothing I could put my finger on at the time, but a low-level hum of distance. A cooler tone. Less physical touch. Less us. And now, suddenly, that night as I lay in bed beside her. She already asleep, breathing steady. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe in her. But something had cracked. Not a break. Not yet. Just a hairline fracture. The kind you only see when the light hits it just right. But it was there. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The key card and receipt should have been enough. Maybe not for a courtroom, but definitely for me. Still, I didn't do anything with them. I didn't bring it up again. Didn't ask any follow-up questions. I just filed it away in that quiet place inside me where uncomfortable truths go to ferment. But once you've seen that crack, once it's there, you start noticing all the other things too. At first, it was subtle. A shift in Casey's wardrobe. She'd always been stylish, sure, but practical. Tailored blazers, earth tones, classic scarves, flats. Lately, though, it was silk blouses that didn't come from outlet racks. Satin camisoles under cropped jackets. Lingerie tags that still had the price stickers clinging to them like ghosts. And everything smelled different, stronger. She'd swapped her usual citrusy perfume for something heavier, muskier. The kind that clung to a room long after she left it. And maybe that could have been explained away too: new donors, higher-tier events, reinventing her professional image. Except I wasn't seeing any of those events on her calendar. Not the shared one on our phones, and not the one stuck to the fridge either. It was like her schedule had gone dark. I didn't say anything about the perfume, or the clothes. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was stress. But then came the phone. She used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter at night. Always screen up, face down, didn't matter. She never worried about who saw what. That changed fast. Now it lived under her pillow. Not on the nightstand. Under the pillow. And if I so much as glanced in its direction, it was like a reflex. She'd grab it, thumbprint unlock, screen down, back into hiding. I joked once, lightly, that she was more protective of her phone than her car keys. She laughed, but it felt off. Too practiced. A laugh with no weight behind it. Then I started seeing the rideshare charges. We both had access to the joint credit card we used for day-to-day expenses, and I usually paid the bills. Suddenly, there were a string of Lyft charges showing up in the late afternoons. Always to the same neighborhood, on the other side of the city. A place neither of us had any connection to. Not residential. Not business. Just generic. Once I asked, offhandedly, where she'd been that day. She blinked, just once, then rattled off something about touring a potential site for a community outreach partnership. The same neighborhood the receipts kept pointing to. She even pulled up an article on her phone about zoning permits. But it felt rehearsed, like she'd prepared it, like she knew I'd ask. She also started going to the gym, or at least that's what she said. We signed up together back in January as one of those New Year's resolutions. She went twice, posted an elliptical selfie, and then dropped off. Until about 6 weeks ago, when she suddenly became committed to wellness. Early morning classes, evening Pilates. Some Saturdays she'd even go twice. But I noticed something strange: no photos, no tagged check-ins, not even any gym gear left out, just a permanent duffel bag that never seemed to move from her trunk. I peeked once when she was inside the house. Inside the bag, a pair of clean sneakers, barely worn, and an unopened pack of resistance bands. One morning I followed her just once. I felt sick about it, like I was crossing some invisible boundary, but I had to know. She said she had an 8 a.m. bar class. She left in full gear, leggings, hoodie, earbuds. I waited 10 minutes, then took my car and followed. She didn't go to the gym. She parked 3 blocks from the riverfront hotel, got out of her car, looked around, then walked through the boutique entrance. No gym bag in sight. I didn't follow her inside. Couldn't. That night, she said her glutes were on fire from squats. I nodded, made us a salad, and said nothing. And then there was Owen. He started off as just a name. Someone from the foundation. A project manager with international experience. She talked about him a lot, casually at first, then more often, then constantly. Owen said the grant needs to be rewritten. Owen thinks the new metrics are backward. Owen has a hilarious theory about board members and ego. Every third sentence seemed to have his name in it, like a drumbeat I couldn't tune out. I Googled him, of course. Nothing unusual, a LinkedIn profile, a couple of panel appearances, some academic work. He was polished, charming, very strategic looking. Wore tailored suits, and in the one photo I could find of him at a gala, he had that effortless way of touching people's shoulders while he talked. That's the kind of man Casey used to make fun of. But now she was quoting him like scripture. Even her tone changed when she said his name. Lighter, like the words floated differently. Our conversations at home became less frequent. Drier. I'd ask how her day went, and I'd get fine. I'd suggest watching a movie, and she'd be too tired. I'd reach for her hand during dinner, and she'd pull away under the guise of checking her phone. We used to talk about everything, even the hard stuff, especially the hard stuff. But now she gave me nothing but updates, logistics, schedules. Her mouth said she loved me, but her eyes never stayed long enough to prove it. And maybe the most telling thing of all? Our son noticed it too. Nathan came home from college for a weekend, just a quick stop between semesters. He's not a kid anymore. Tall, sharp-eyed, and quieter than he used to be. He still notices everything. Always has. He pulled me aside the second night. "Is everything okay with Mom?" he asked, his tone cautious. I played dumb. Shrugged it off. "She's been busy at work." He nodded slowly. "She just seems somewhere else." And she did. She laughed when she was supposed to. Smiled for photos. Patted Nathan's back when he left like everything was fine. But there was no warmth in it. No weight. Just a woman on autopilot. I started writing things down. Dates. Receipts. Notes. Not because I wanted to catch her in something, but because I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Like I needed to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. I opened a private folder on my laptop, started cataloging it all. Every time she left early. Every time she came home with perfect hair and no explanation. Every time her location history was disabled, then mysteriously re-enabled. I stopped sleeping through the night. Woke up at 3 a.m. Too often, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with questions I had no answers to. I still hadn't confronted her. Not directly. Part of me was still clinging to the hope that I was wrong. That maybe this was just a phase. A midlife detour. Personal reinvention. I wanted her to tell me, really tell me that things had changed and why. But that's the thing about suspicions, they don't shrink on their own. They grow, multiply, and once they've taken root, no amount of pretending can unsee the shape they're forming. I wasn't looking for proof, but it was looking for me, and it was getting closer. It didn't happen because I went looking for it. I wish I could say I was some kind of genius, piecing together digital breadcrumbs to uncover the truth. But the truth found me, and it did so in the most mundane, ordinary way imaginable through our shared family iPad. That iPad had been gathering dust on the side table in the living room, mostly used for watching recipes on YouTube or browsing Zillow for houses we had no intention of buying. It hadn't even crossed my mind that it was still synced to Casey's Apple ID. She used it once in a while, mostly during trips, to watch shows or log into meetings, but I hadn't seen her touch it in months. Until that night. I was sitting alone in the living room, trying to distract myself with a documentary about urban design. Of all things, when the screen lit up, a notification, iCloud sync completed. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something, call it instinct or maybe just that persistent itch in the back of my skull, made me pick it up. I didn't expect to see anything. I tapped open the Photos app, half out of boredom, half out of habit. What I found stopped me cold. The album was buried under an innocuous name, Meeting Notes, something you'd never think to open unless you were looking for graphs or scanned documents. But inside weren't PDFs or spreadsheets. Inside were photos, selfies mostly, Casey in hotel room mirrors, her expression soft, careful, subtly different. Not staged, not fake, but mate in a way that wasn't meant for me. In one of them, her phone reflected in the mirror, you could clearly see someone standing behind her. A man. Just his hand, resting against her hip. Confident. Familiar. Fingers curled loosely like they'd been there before. I felt my mouth go dry. The room was silent, but my heart was thudding in my ears like a war drum. I kept scrolling. There were timestamps. The same nights she'd been at a board dinner or traveling for donor site visits. I checked the metadata location tags, timestamps. All pointed to the same place. Riverfront Hotel, room 418. Over and over again. And then I opened Messages. I don't know why I tapped on the Messages app. I didn't even realize iMessage was syncing across devices. But there it was. Her entire chat history with one contact, Owen. There were no hearts in the name, no emojis. Just Owen. Clean. Professional. Almost sterile. Like it was hiding in plain sight. But the messages were anything but professional. They weren't crude or explicit. Not in the way you might expect. They were romantic. Mate. Familiar. The kind of familiarity that only comes from repetition. From knowing the other person's rhythms and responses without guessing. Still thinking about you this morning. You looked unreal in that green dress. Could barely focus during the meeting. Booked the same room again for next month. I'll leave the key with the concierge like last time. I hated seeing you drive away. Feels wrong, like we're pressing pause on real life. He still doesn't suspect anything? And Casey's replies. He notices, but he doesn't ask. It's easier when he doesn't. I keep thinking we're going to get caught. But also, I kind of want to stop hiding. Part of me hates lying. Next time, I'm not going home right away. I want the whole night. I sat there frozen. Every word felt like a nail driven into something I hadn't realized was already in a coffin. There were dozens of texts. Not just logistical planning, though there was plenty of that too. Dates, times, flights, rideshares, hotel bookings, but also little check-ins. Inside jokes. Photos from mundane places, cafes, bookstores, her office. Things that shouldn't feel mate but suddenly did. Because they weren't shared with me. One message thread detailed their anniversary. A 1-year marker of the first night they'd spent together. She'd ordered champagne to the room. He'd brought her a book she mentioned offhand once. Some out-of-print novel she loved in college. She called it the most thoughtful thing anyone's ever done for me. Not me. Him. My hands were trembling. I could barely hold the iPad. I stood up, walked in circles, sat back down. My mind was spinning, not just with anger or betrayal but with logistics, practical thoughts, legal thoughts, survival thoughts. This wasn't an affair that started last month, or even this year. This had been going on for over a year, and I hadn't known. Not really. Not in a way I could have proven. But now I had dates, receipts, photos, conversations. I had proof. I cross-referenced the messages with our calendar, with bank statements, with the Lyft charges, with every vague excuse she'd given me over the last several months. It all lined up. Even the breakfasts, even the damn cologne. I pulled out my laptop and created a folder. Password protected. Backed up to the cloud. Labeled with a name only I'd recognize. I ***ed every message. Every photo. Every booking confirmation. I made copies. External hard drive, USB, a private Dropbox I hadn't used since grad school. Because here's the thing about truth. Once you have it, you have to protect it. People lie. They rationalize. They revise history. But ***TS don't blink. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch, iPad in my lap, watching the cursor blink on the file names I was renaming one by one. Room 418_September. JPG. Text thread _Owen_3 AM. PDF. Casey_mirror photo _hand visible. PNG. I thought about confronting her, marching upstairs, waking her up, shoving the iPad in her hands and asking her to explain every last word. But I couldn't, because I needed to think, to plan. This wasn't just about my hurt feelings. We had joint accounts, a house, a reputation, a life, and now, a map of betrayal laid out in timestamps and text bubbles. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. I made coffee. I asked if she wanted eggs or toast. She kissed my cheek and said, "Thanks, babe." And I smiled back. Because now I knew. Because now I had the thing I'd been trying so hard not to see. And because when someone builds a secret life behind your back, the moment you finally see it clearly, that's when you stop being a bystander and start being something else. I waited 3 days before doing anything. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I wanted to be absolutely sure. And because I wanted to see her with new eyes. It's a strange thing, carrying around the truth while pretending you don't. It changes the temperature of a room. Changes you. You start measuring silences. You start studying the patterns in someone's voice. You stop hearing what they say and start watching how they say it. You stop looking at them and start looking through them. Casey was still going through the motions, cooking occasionally, kissing me before she left for the foundation, talking about campaigns and end-of-year donations like we were still a team. But now, everything she said came with a second meaning. Or a third. When she mentioned late meetings, I'd nod and think, room 418 again. When she said Owen's name in passing, I'd mentally scroll to a ***T of a message where they joked about sneaking back before the cleaning crew noticed. When she showed me a mock-up of a fundraising poster, I saw the exact dress she was wearing in a photo she'd sent him from the hotel bathroom mirror. She had no idea I knew. And that gave me time. Time to prepare. Time to decide how I wanted to end this. I didn't want a scene. No public meltdowns. No screaming matches in parking lots or awkward calls to mutual friends. What I needed was clarity. And proof that I wasn't alone in this. That's when I found Amy, Owen's wife. Her name had shown up once in a message between Casey and Owen. Just a passing mention. Amy's away this weekend, so I'll be able to get a late checkout. I hadn't known anything about her. But the internet has a way of revealing what people try to keep separate. It wasn't hard to track her down. A few clicks through Owen's old faculty bio, a professional Facebook page for her small graphic design studio, a public Instagram with too many inspirational quotes and carefully curated brunches. She looked kind and tired. I sat with her profile open for hours, debating. But in the end, I sent a message. "Hi, Amy. You don't know me. My name is Ben. I believe our lives have been intersecting without our knowledge. I'm not trying to cause drama. I think we should talk. Privately, carefully, just the two of us." She didn't respond right away. I figured maybe she wouldn't. But the next afternoon, she replied. I had a feeling. When and where? We met at a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday. A quiet one tucked into the back of a bookstore neutral ground. She arrived before me. I knew who she was the second I saw her. She looked like someone bracing for impact. When I sat down across from her, she didn't say hello. She just asked, "How long?" I slid the tablet across the table. "I have receipts going back 12 months, I said. Photos, messages, bookings. I haven't confronted Casey. I'm still collecting myself." Amy didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just picked up the tablet and started scrolling through the photos. Her face barely moved. Except for her eyes, they went still, then narrowed. "This was our anniversary weekend," she said, holding up a *T of Casey in lingerie. "He said he was at a retreat in Boulder. Sent me pictures of mountains." "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She looked at me, and for a second, I thought she'd break. But then she took a long sip of her coffee and set the tablet down gently. "Can I send these to myself?" she asked. "I have bank statements. A deposit on a rental in Silver Lake." I thought he was investing in a project with his cousin. I even helped him write the cover letter. "Of course," I said. We sat in silence for a few minutes, two strangers in the quiet glow of a bookstore cafe, connected by betrayal we hadn't asked for. "I thought I was crazy," she said eventually. "You know, I'd ask questions and he'd make me feel paranoid. He said I was projecting, that I was jealous of his career. I started wondering if maybe I really was just overreacting." "No," I said steady. "You weren't." She looked at me then, really looked, and nodded slowly. "So what now?" We talked. Not about revenge. Not about blowing up their lives. We talked about the damage, the logistics, the things people never tell you about infidelity, how it makes you question your memory, your judgment, your ability to trust the shape of your own life. "I thought maybe we were just in a rough patch," I said. "Now I feel like I've been living in someone else's house." Amy nodded. "He started locking the bathroom when he brushed his teeth. Told me it was for alone time." She laughed bitterly. "What kind of grown man needs alone time to floss?" We agreed on two things. We weren't going to let them rewrite the story, and we weren't going to fall apart in front of them. We started assembling a timeline. My iCloud screensh *TS. Her Venmo history, Lyft routes, photos, hotel bills, weekend trips, calendar blocks. The story told itself when laid out in black and white. It was almost surgical, coordinated, cold. Amy forwarded me a confirmation email from a real estate agent. Owen had placed a deposit on an apartment for himself and a long-term partner. 2 bedrooms. Riverview. Lease to begin January. The name on the backup contact? KCB. She showed me a notification on her phone. Owen had submitted a temporary separation form through their joint legal insurance provider, effective the end of the month. "So," I said, "he's already started packing." She nodded. "And lying about it." We didn't smile, but there was something solid in the silence between us. A strange comfort in knowing we weren't the only ones who saw it all. We agreed to keep everything, back up everything. No edits, no accidental deletions. Amy had already spoken to a friend of hers who worked in compliance and data privacy. She offered to help us compile everything into a secure shared folder, date-stamped, redundant, and legally safe. We weren't interested in drama, just truth, just evidence, just a clean record of what they did, in case they ever tried to spin it into something else. I told her about Casey's upcoming birthday, the foundation's big event on the riverfront, the pavilion with the city skyline view. She thinks it'll be a soft launch of her transition into leadership consulting, new chapter and all that. Amy's eyes darkened. "You think she'll announce it?" "I think Owen will be there. I think they'll make it official. I think she believes I'm still 2 steps behind." Amy pulled out her phone and smiled for the first time. Small, tired, but real. "Then maybe it's time we gave them the facts. No names. No commentary. Just a quiet little presentation of dates and documents. Let everyone draw their own conclusions. A silent slideshow, I said. She nodded. Truth doesn't need an introduction. We agreed to meet once more before the event. To finalize everything. To make sure the narrative was clear, impersonal, bulletproof. Just data. Just the facts. And to remind each other not to flinch when the moment came. When we left the cafe, we didn't hug. Didn't shake hands. We just walked in opposite directions. Two people who had been quietly rewritten out of their own stories. But not anymore. Now we had our own chapter. And it began with this. We know. Casey's birthday fell on the first Saturday of December. Always a dramatic time of year. Early snow, twinkling city lights, people clinging to whatever warmth the season could give. That year, she decided to host it at the riverfront pavilion. Ironic, really. The same river she'd stared at from a dozen hotel rooms now framed the party she thought would launch her next act. She told me the event would be int*mate but impressive. About 50 guests. A mix of foundation colleagues, longtime donors, and a few strategic figures from her professional network. She wanted soft lighting, elevated hors d'oeuvres, and a playlist that builds but doesn't beg for attention. I nodded through the planning, helped with seating charts, ordered the flowers, even booked the AV technician. It was easy by that point to play the part. She had no idea I'd already met Amy twice since our coffee shop alliance. No idea we'd organized everything down to the second. Our plan was simple, not dramatic, not vengeful, just real. No names, no accusations, no screaming across a ballroom, just a quiet reveal of what had been happening behind the scenes. All of it delivered like a birthday slideshow, projected on the pavilion wall. Clean, curated, chronological. Every receipt, every time-stamped message, every hotel booking, presented like data in a portfolio. That night I arrived early. I wore the suit she liked, the navy one with the dark buttons and the lapel that never creased. I shook hands, smiled, complimented centerpieces I hadn't chosen, posed for a few photos beside her, our arms around each other in that polished way long-term couples do. People who no longer share a real center of gravity but still know how to orbit for the cameras. Amy was already there when I arrived. She wore a deep Berg *NDY dress. Nothing flashy, but it made her presence known. She worked the room with grace, introducing herself to donors as a friend of the family. Most assumed she was from the finance side. She let them think so. Around 8:30 p.m. The pavilion filled out. The string quartet finished their last set, and the lights dimmed slightly for toasts. Casey stood at the front of the room, holding a glass of Prosecco and wearing the dress she'd bought during a retreat weekend in Boston. I recognized it from a mirror selfie she'd sent to Owen, captioned, "Do you like this one or the silk one better?" She looked radiant, confident, completely unaware. "I just want to thank everyone who's been part of my journey," she said, voice steady and bright. "This year's been a transition point for me, professionally and personally, and I'm so grateful to stand here surrounded by people who've supported and challenged me, who've helped me see what's possible when you stop living small." Murmurs of approval followed. Light applause. She raised her glass and added, "After this, I'll be making a little announcement, something I've been sitting on for a while." That was our cue. Right on time, a younger colleague of hers, a woman named Lee, who didn't realize I was out of the loop, leaned over to me during the applause and whispered, "She's finally doing it, huh? Announcing the move-in with the project manager?" I turned to her slowly. "The what?" Lee flushed. "Oh, sorry, I assumed you knew." But I didn't respond. I just smiled, nodded once, and stepped away. Amy was already in position at the tech booth. We'd programmed it as a standard slideshow. The file was named Birthday Montage _Final, PPTX. It auto-loaded when you clicked the birthday playlist. Seamless, elegant, anonymous. No photos of us smiling, just the facts. Amy gave me one last glance from across the room. I gave a small nod, and then it began. At first, people leaned forward, expecting vacation photos or goofy childhood moments. But what they saw was a sequence of images and screensh *ts. Polished, minimal, and impossible to misread. A lift receipt, 11:12 p.m. Riverfront hotel drop-off. A time-stamped hotel charge for room 418. A photo of a booking confirmation KCB and ONS. 2 adults, King Suite, early check-in requested. A cropped message, I hate sneaking. Can't wait until we don't have to. Another, Ben still doesn't know. I feel sick about it, but also not enough to stop. Receipts, calendars, confirmations, quiet little bombs disguised as pixels and text. Not a single name was said. No faces shown, except Casey's, in a mirror selfie labeled, Friday morning, room 418. The room went dead silent. People stopped sipping, stopped breathing. Forks hovered midair. And Casey, still standing with her glass, watched the wall behind her begin to tell the story she thought she had hidden. Her smile faltered. She turned, slowly, as if unsure what she was seeing. At first, I think she thought it was a mistake. Some kind of technical glitch. Her hand moved toward the mic, but she didn't speak. And then the next slide appeared. A message from Owen. The apartment's almost ready. Can't wait to fall asleep beside you every night. Below it, the rental agreement confirmation. 2 names. 2 signatures. KCB, ONS. No music. No voiceover. Just facts, laid bare. Guests started shifting uncomfortably. Some excused themselves. Others looked to me, waiting for a cue, for some reaction. I gave them none. Let the silence speak. A donor couple near the front table stood and walked out quietly. One of the board members followed. A woman from HR blinked twice, stood up, and asked someone to *L the stream. But by then it was too late. The truth had been seen. Casey's mouth opened, but no words came. She looked at me, then at the crowd, then back to the projection. Her fingers trembled around the glass stem. The room wasn't angry. It wasn't outraged. It was just still, like everyone had just watched a chandelier fall. The slideshow ended with a clean black screen. No credits. No fade-out. Just a simple white line of text in the bottom right corner. This is not an accusation. This is documentation. And then the lights came up. It took her a full minute to move. She didn't make a speech. She didn't explain. She didn't need to, because what could she possibly say that wasn't already on the wall? I stepped aside and let people leave. Some approached me quietly, shook my hand, whispered, I'm sorry, or if you need anything. Amy disappeared into the crowd. I stayed until the end. I didn't say goodbye to her. I didn't offer a final word. Casey sat on the edge of the stage in her designer heels, staring down at her hands like she couldn't quite believe they were hers. She never looked up. When I finally walked out into the cold night air, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken either. I just felt clear, like something had finally snapped into place. And the birthday she'd hoped would begin her next chapter? It had. Just not the chapter she was expecting. The fallout was immediate. Donors withdrew, the board called for an internal review, and Owen vanished. No calls, no appearance. Casey's reputation collapsed overnight. At home, silence took over. Separate meals, closed doors, careful distance. Amy filed for separation. I focused on preserving the evidence. There would be no chance to revise history, not this time. The next morning, I filed for divorce. I packed her things methodically, scheduled their removal, and changed the locks. Nathan offered to move home, but I told him to stay focused on school. That same afternoon, Owen's hotel charges hit his company's audit system. The last puzzle piece. No rage, no sorrow. Just a cold, undeniable line drawn between the life I had and the one I was reclaiming. I felt light, free, and absolutely done.